Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, this material is created by EasyPathUni by coordinations with Yazan Ibrahim. And Yazan brings, well, a ton of real-world experience. He's been head of audit for a financial department, so he really knows his stuff when it comes to audit, risk management, financial analysis, you name it. Plus, he's got a whole alphabet soup of certifications: CISA, CFE, GRCP, GRCA, IPPA, FMVA, CBCA, BDA. Basically, he lives and breathes this complex financial world. Academically solid, too, with degrees in accounting and auditing. So yeah, the perfect background for what we're tackling today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into the really fascinating and honestly critical transformation of enterprise risk management. ERM, we're talking about how it's gone from being, just a compliance checkbox somewhere in the back office to actually being a strategic game changer. Our mission here is to cut through all the jargon, understand how it evolved, and really see why it's become such a pivotal driver of value now.
We're digging into insights from this comprehensive report, 13 worldwide, the global transformation of enterprise risk management, from siloed functions to strategic convergence.
What's fascinating here, I think, is just the world we live in now. It's unprecedented, right? The complexity, the interconnectedness. Think about global supply chains, tech shifts happening overnight, regulations constantly changing. In that kind of environment, understanding risk isn't just like a nice to have. It's absolutely foundational for survival, for growth. And this deep dive hopefully will show how companies are moving past just reacting to risks to actually, strategically leveraging that uncertainty, turning it into an advantage.
Right. And to really get where ERM is today, we kind of need to look back. It wasn't always this big global integrated thing, was it? I mean, some of the earliest big ideas came out of specific projects, didn't they? Like the U.S. Navy's Polaris missile project back in the 50s. They came up with PEERT program evaluation review technique that was specifically to handle the massive unknowns in cost and time for that project. And you also had things like CPM, the critical path method, and work breakdown structures, WBS, still fundamental tools today.
Exactly. And those early efforts, they might have been focused locally maybe on insurable risks in finance or physical safety for engineers, but they proved the concept. They showed that a structured way of looking at uncertainty, well, it worked. It laid the groundwork for something much bigger, more systematic. A really pivotal moment for the international side of things was probably Australia and New Zealand's ASNZS 4T360 standard, first out in '95. That became a kind of foundational model, and it really influenced ISO 31000 when that came along in 2009. And ISO 31000, that was huge, gave everyone a common language, defining risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives, very principles-based. Okay, now here's something that I think trips a lot of people up. When we talk about risk globally, there's this difference between a standard and a framework. And it's not just semantics, right? It actually impacts how companies run things, their governance, even their legal situation. That's a really vital distinction to make clear. Let's break it down. So standards like ISO 31000. Think of these as internationally recognized guidelines. They're designed to be flexible, they're not prescriptive. They give you a common language, a philosophy for risk that works across any kind of organization. And here's the key thing. ISO 31000 is specifically not meant for certification. It's about integrating it, embedding a mindset, not just ticking boxes on a checklist.
Okay, so ISO is the guiding philosophy. What about frameworks then, like CISO, ERM?
Right. Frameworks like CSO, ERM are more like structured methodologies. Think of them as practical roadmaps. They have predefined components, principles. They're generally more prescriptive. COSO ERM, particularly in the U.S. for public companies, it's essentially become the de facto standard because of Sarbanes-Oxley SOX compliance. So for financial reporting under SOX, using COSO isn't just, good practice. It's pretty much a legal mandate. There's real accountability there.
Okay, so hang on. If you're a big multinational company, you might be using ISO 31000 globally for that flexible approach. But then for your U.S. operations, you have to use EOSO ERM because of SEC rules and SOX. How do you even manage that? Sounds like it could get messy.
Oh, it absolutely can. You end up with different teams scoring risks differently, different reporting methods. It can be a real headache. The solution really is pushing for what we call a single source of truth. Basically harmonizing these different views within an integrated system. So leaders get a consistent picture of the risk landscape, allowing them to make coherent decisions that satisfy both the global principles and those strict legal requirements like SOX.
Right, which brings us nicely to the bigger picture of how ERM itself transformed. You mentioned we started fragmented. Finance handled insurance, engineering handled safety. It was all very reactive, looking backwards. But then the 70s, 80s, things started changing. New risks popped up, volatile markets, early e-commerce, and the old siloed way just couldn't keep up. That's when ERM as this holistic, integrated idea really started to gain traction. And a big marker was creating the Chief Risk Officer role, the CRO, back in 1993. Finally, someone looking across the whole enterprise.
Exactly. That CRO role really signifies the shift. A modern, effective ERM program today isn't a one-off project. It's continuous, it's repeatable, it's deeply embedded in the company's governance, its culture, its strategy. It gives you that top-down, holistic view, which is crucial not just for spotting threats, but also for identifying opportunities hidden in uncertainty. And two major frameworks really capture this modern view. First, there's COSO ARM 2017. The subtitle says it all: integrating with strategy and performance. Its big idea is that you can't separate risk management from how you set your strategy and measure your performance. They're intrinsically linked. It talks about 5 components, but honestly, the real emphasis is on governance and culture. Things like psychological safety, making sure people feel safe raising concerns. And having that strong tone at the top, that really values risk awareness. It even uses things like risk curves to show visually how managing risk impacts performance.
Okay, so QSO links it tightly to strategy and performance, especially with that SOX angle. What about ISO 31000 then, the 2018 version?
Right, ISO 31000, 2018, is the modern global standard. Its real strength is its universality and flexibility. It's generic, principles-based. It applies to any organization, large or small, public or private. The goal is to help you create and protect value by managing that effective uncertainty on objectives, both the downsides and the upsides. And remember, still not certifiable, which reinforces its role as guidance, a way of thinking, not a rigid set of rules. Its structure, principles, framework, process makes it really compatible with other ISO management systems people might already have, like for quality or information security. And its adoption in, 82 countries? Shows its global reach.
Okay, so if we bring this back down to earth a bit, particularly for folks in finance, it sounds like the role of accountants, CFOs.
Yeah.
It's changing quite dramatically. It's not just about the historical numbers anymore, is it? What does all this convergence of risk and strategy mean for finance teams day to day?
It means a pretty profound shift. The International Federation of Accountants, IFAC way, they talk about the CFO and the finance function becoming the spider in the web, synthesizing this holistic view of risk from across the entire organization. And it's not just financial risk anymore. It's about providing insights into anything threat or opportunity that could impact value. You see this directly reflected in accounting standards. Take IFRS 9, which kicked in back in 2018. It forced a move from looking at incurred losses, what bad debts have we already had, to a forward-looking expected loss model. So financial reporting itself now depends heavily on your ability to predict future risks.
Wow. And what about ESG? That seems to be everywhere now.
Exactly. ESG, environmental, social, governance reporting, has gone from being largely voluntary to actually mandatory in many places. Think the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD. And these aren't just suggestions. They come with significant penalties for noncompliance. A really key concept here is double materiality, which means companies have to report not just how ESG issues might affect their bottom line, like climate change risks to their facilities, but also how their own operations impact society and the environment, like their carbon emissions or labor practices.
So it's a two-way street.
Precisely. It turns risk reporting into a really strategic tool for building trust with stakeholders, investors, customers, employees, and ensuring the business is sustainable long-term. So you've got ISO 31000 providing that flexible global guidance, COSO ERM giving you the structure for strategic alignment and compliance like SOX. You kind of need both for that truly integrated view.
That is a lot to juggle, which makes me wonder, how on earth did organizations actually make this leap from, clunky spreadsheets and endless email chains trying to track risks to implementing these complex frameworks and actually getting real-time insights? Technology must have played a massive role.
Oh, absolutely indispensable. The old ways, fragmented data stuck in silos, manual processes, they just couldn't cope with the speed and complexity. That's where GRC platforms came in. Governance, risk, and compliance platforms. They're essentially the backbone for integrated risk management now. They pull all that risk, compliance, audit data together into that single source of truth we talked about, finally breaking down those departmental walls.
And what did these platforms actually do?
Well, key things are like automated workflows, taking the grunt work out of tracking controls or sending reminders. Huge time saver. And multi-framework mapping. This is really clever. It lets you map your internal controls to multiple requirements. ISO, NIST for cyber, GDPR for privacy, SOX all at once. Ensures consistency, avoids duplication. Plus, you get dynamic dashboards for real-time visibility, and they're built for global companies, multi-language, region-specific rules. Platforms like ServiceNow, Risk Connect, Audit Board, Logigate, they're providing these integrated solutions.
Okay, and then you throw AI into the mix. How's artificial intelligence changing the risk game?
AI, well, that's shifting things from reactive to genuinely proactive. AI systems can sift through absolutely massive amounts of data, internal, external spotting patterns, anomalies, potential issues in real time that humans would just never catch. This fuels predictive analytics. So you're not just reporting on past events, you're forecasting future risks with, frankly, remarkable accuracy sometimes. Think predicting supply chain disruptions by analyzing global news, weather patterns, shipping data, or detecting complex fraud patterns as they happen. Even in internal audit, AI streamlining things, analyzing huge volumes of transactions to flag unusual journal entries, monitoring user access for SOX compliance continuously, not just periodically. It's that fundamental shift from what happened to what's likely to happen next.
And how do you make sense of all that data, especially for leadership?
That's where data-driven storytelling and executive dashboards come in. The challenge is always communicating complex risk information quickly and clearly to decision makers. Good dashboards are like living snapshots. They use intuitive visuals, heat maps showing risk severity and likelihood. Bowtie diagrams are great for showing how one risk event can cascade, and they need to be customizable. The board needs a different view than the head of IT security. You focus on key risk indicators, KRIs, that are directly linked to the company's strategic objectives. The goal is to tell a clear, compelling story, backed by data, about how ERM is actually creating and protecting value, turning data into actionable intelligence.
It's a massive leap in capability, no doubt. But looking ahead, it feels like the complexity isn't exactly decreasing, is it? What are the big hurdles now? I'm thinking about things like different regulations in different parts of the world and these emerging risks that seem increasingly tangled together.
You're hitting on two major points there. Regulatory divergence is definitely a big one. You see the EU taking this quite top-down, legally binding approach, particularly on ESG, AI. The CSRD is a prime example. It's often described as a people-first compliance approach.
Yeah.
Then you look at the U.S., and it tends to be more fragmented, more market-driven. The SEC tries to bring in climate rules, and there's immediate pushback. For a global company, this is a strategic headache. But here's the interesting part. Proactively aligning with those stricter EU rules, even if you don't have to everywhere else, that can actually become a competitive advantage. It builds trust, opens markets.
So using the strictest standard as your baseline, almost.
Pretty much. It can elevate compliance from just a cost to something strategic. Then there's the interconnectedness of emerging risks, looking out to 2025 and beyond. Ask any C-suite, and they'll talk about macroeconomic volatility, these really advanced cyber threats, often AI-powered now talent issues, geopolitical instability, and AI is a perfect example of that dual-edged sword. It's an amazing tool for managing risk, but it's also creating totally new types of risk. AI-driven phishing, deepfake spooling verification systems, even self-managing botnets. It's an arms race between AI attackers and AI defenders. Yeah. And because everything's so connected, a cyber attack over here or a supply chain issue over there doesn't stay contained. It ripples through the whole business, impacting finance, operations, reputation. That's why frameworks like CSO talk about a portfolio view of risk, and why GRC platforms are developing risk ripple intelligence to help visualize those complex dependencies. And that old line between IT risk and business risk, it's basically gone. Digital resilience has to be baked into core strategy now, overseen directly by the board, not just handed off to the tech team. Cyber, AI, ESG, geopolitics, these are board-level conversations now.
But okay, even with all this incredible tech, predictive analytics, AI defenders, strip it all away. What's the real bedrock, the ultimate control? It's got to be people, right? The culture.
Absolutely. 100%. You talk to experts, you read the reports time and again, a positive risk-aware culture comes out as the single most critical factor for effective ERM. It's the ultimate control. It underpins everything else, all the policies, the procedures, the tech. It's about how people behave day to day, how they make decisions, how they respond when things go wrong, and it has to come from the top. Leadership sets the tone. They have to foster that psychological safety we mentioned, where people genuinely feel okay raising concerns, pointing out problems, even using whistleblower channels without fearing comeback.
And the CRO role fits into that culture piece.
Massively. The CRO isn't just the risk police anymore, focused only on compliance. The modern CRO is a strategic partner, a value creator. They bridge the gap between operations and the board, often reporting directly to the board or its risk committee. That gives them the independence and authority to challenge assumptions, to push for better practices. And the audit committee is key too, overseeing the whole ERM process, making sure internal audit is focused on the risks that really matter. But yeah, at the end of the day, technology is powerful, frameworks are essential, but the human factor, that culture, that mindset, that's your most resilient defense, even against the smartest AI threat out there.
So where does that leave us? What does this all mean? We've seen ERM transform from this fragmented reactive thing into a truly holistic strategic discipline. We've talked about global convergence, using standards and frameworks smartly, and how technology, GRC, AI has just completely revolutionized the field, turning risk data into real-time intelligence. It's clear ERM isn't just about stopping bad things from happening anymore. It's actually a powerful engine for creating value, for building resilience in this incredibly fast-changing world.
Exactly. And if you connect that to the really big picture, in a world that's only getting more complex, more driven by AI, getting ERM right isn't just defensive. It's about actively building a sustainable competitive edge. It's about creating an organization that doesn't just survive uncertainty, but actually thrives on it, being proactive, shaping your future instead of just reacting to it. So maybe the question to leave everyone with is, how will you take these ideas, these tools, and use them to turn your organization's uncertainties into its biggest strengths, its greatest opportunities?